state your name.
I, Alice Rowe,
Do solemnly
John
swear
Anderson.
or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
and the ordinances and resolutions
and the ordinances and resolutions
and rules and regulations
and regulations
of the city of Tucson, Arizona,
of the city of Tucson, Arizona,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of
discharge the duties of the
the office of member, Grant Road Corridor Planning Task Force
Grant Road Corridor Planning Task Force
of the city of Tucson, Arizona,
of the city of Tucson, Arizona,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God, or so I do affirm.
So help me God.
Or so I do affirm.
Thank you. So all you need to do is sign your oath, scan it and email it to boards and commissions, or if you have a hard copy of it, you can just put that in that self-addressed envelope we sent you and mail it off to us. So whatever works for you is fine. Just make sure you sign it, and then I will sign the notary portion when it gets to the office.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. This is
Anna,
certainly a
before
little
you
bit
drop-
easier.
And before Anna jumps off, if we do get Linda on to the meeting, she can join as a task force member and participate in the discussion for tonight's meeting. So that way everyone understands.
That is correct. Her oath from her prior appointment will carry over into this new new term, but we do want to have that new oath in our files as soon as possible. So we'll definitely get with her, but her oath from her previous term will carry over to this term for a few months. So she can vote.
Before we let Anna off the line, are there any other questions for the clerk's office? Okay, thank you, Anna. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Have a good meeting, everyone.
Okay, we have quorum, so we can officially start the meeting. I am Joan Landers. I will be your facilitator. For some of you that have been with us for years, may know that Nancy Fink-Pfizer has retired, so I'll be filling in for her role. So to start the meeting, we need to actually do a formal roll call to establish quorum. So if you could just answer yes when I call your name, please. Alice Rowe.
Here.
Andrew Jones.
Here.
David Sunderman.
Here.
Deirdre Brosnan.
Here.
James Hogan. James?
I don't see him on the list, Joan.
Okay, he was here at one time. Okay. John Anderson.
Here.
John Wakefield.
Here.
We know what's happening with Linda Small. Moon Jo Yi. Roy Garcia.
Here.
Shannon McBride Olson.
Here.
We are at 8 members, fully connected, and 8 meets a quorum. Okay. So virtual meeting, we've gone through some of the hardest parts of it already tonight. Just reminders is mute when you're not speaking. Try to use the raise your hand feature. Does anyone need us to show you where that is on your screen? It's up here on the top where you can have a feature, and you can turn your camera off and on as you wish. But I prefer when you're talking, if you could turn your camera on so we can keep track of who we're hearing from for the minutes in the legal action report. Okay, I'm going to move on to item E. You received last week,
Hey,
the March
Joan?
2nd. Oh, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Are we going to record the meeting or no?
Yes, the meeting has been recorded, and I was supposed to tell the group that we are recording the meeting. So thank you, Alejandro.
No problem.
So the meeting is being recorded. The meeting is used for the documentation for the legal action report and the minutes. Okay, so you've received the March 2nd meeting minutes. Is there any discussion or comments?
Motion to approve the meetings as presented.
Thank you, Roy. So since we do consensus and we have agreement and no changes and we're in virtual meeting, Letty will have to do a roll call vote, but she'll go through that very quickly. Here's your. Oh, I guess we need a second.
Second, Alice Rowe.
Okay, perfect. So I'll go ahead and do the roll call vote. Alice Rowe,
Yes.
thank you. Andrew Jones,
Yes.
thank you. David Sunderman,
Yes.
thank you. Deirdre Brosnahan,
Yes.
thank you. Jim Hogan,
He dropped off.
okay. John Anderson,
Yes.
thank you. John Wakefield,
Yes.
thank you. Linda, are you logged in? I believe she's logged in, but she was having audio issues.
She has audio now. Oh, she was unmuted for a second. And now she's not in the meeting.
Oh, she must have dropped off. I'll have to call her back. Roy Garcia,
Yes.
thank you. And Shannon McBride Olson,
Yes.
thank you. So yes, we have a unanimous approval.
Okay, the next agenda item was F, to go through the summary of input from the April and May. Oh, excuse me, I got out of order again. Bob, do you want to do the team introductions at this time?
Sure, I can.
Wait, wait a second. Suzanne Alexander has her hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you know I'm here because I don't know. I wasn't in the roll call. I don't know if I needed to be or not.
Okay, sorry about missing that.
Actually, we did. Thank you for keeping us.
Okay.
And what is your vote for the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay.
Okay, Bob, do you want to do the introduction of the team members?
Sure, we have many things to cover tonight. It's going to be a long meeting, and we're glad you all made it. That being said, my name's Bob. Last name's Rogentine, and I'm the project manager for the Grant Road 5-6 and 3-4 for the city of Tucson. We have a number of people here tonight representing the city and the design team. David Burbank has moved over to the 22nd Street project. So Sarah Spencer is going to be my backup manager, and you have met her in the past. And welcome, Sarah. And I see on the line we have Rick Ellis, and he's our representative from the RTA. And he will be maybe called upon to answer specific questions if we have some of those issues. Diana Alicon will join us later, and she's our Director of Department of Transportation and Mobility. That's the Amanda Valenzuela is our PIO officer for this particular project, and you'll be getting to know her very well. I see Rebecca Roop from Development Services is on the line. We appreciate her dropping in to possibly answer specific questions. And I think, unless I've missed people from the city, I hope I have not. The project team is also consists of Randy Cheney, who is the assistant project manager with Somas Engineering, and Alejandro is the project manager, which I think you all know from phase 2.
Helps if I'm not muted, huh? Okay, thank you, Bob. And if you're on your screen and you list participants, you can see other community members and elected officials' offices that are also joining us today. So with the introductions, if I haven't missed anything else, one of the discussions that was occurring is that possibly if we move the call to the audience item H up to earlier in the agenda, that way the task force has a chance to hear from community members as they go into the discussion and the report out. I will share that there were 3 public input reports that we received and shared with the task force members. Andrew, I see your hand raised. And you're muted now.
I would vote for that, please. Sorry about that.
Hey, we're all in this together tonight, between hot weather and technology. Do any of the task force members oppose? And those that have registered to the call to the audience, I can call on you if we don't hear any other feedback.
Hello. You guys hear me?
Yes. Is that you, Moon?
No. My name is Moon Yi. I joined you late, so it's my apologies. So I'm on the phone right now talking with you, listening to the meeting.
Welcome, Georgie.
Moon will mark you as in attendance, and we did see your number earlier, so we are good. And in fact, we had a quorum. We're moving forward.
Okay, great. I just listen and participate. All right. Thank you.
We'll remember to call on you.
Okay.
Okay, with that, we've received requests from Joan Daniels and Janet Fisher to speak to the task force members. And as I said, they did receive your letters that you submitted to us. So Joan, would you like to speak first?
Okay, I just unmuted myself. If you already have what I wrote, I'll just kind of summarize it. You all know that this is the segment that has the most residential area, some houses of which face Grant Road after this is all done. And these particular neighborhoods have had a long history of getting historic districts, getting NPZs, doing the neighborhood plans, so invested in their neighborhoods. I did have a question about the funding, and the term that's used is the city and RTA are committed to securing funding. So that made me think, you don't know how much it is. Maybe it's a little, maybe it's a lot. So why can't we ask for the best amount? Catalina Vista is only asking for a safety wall. That's the one that where the houses face Grant Road. And they get a curb. Seems like they could have a 4-foot wall and preserve people from coming across cars phase, what excites us the most in Jefferson Park, that's phase 2, because we've gotten some 3-4 blocks of it. It is absolutely wonderful. But what I'm concerned about is when I read the Excel sheet, the language was not very specific. Its intent and purposes, and then when they talk about the stabilized vegetation, and I'm not sure exactly what stabilization is. If it involves grading, and then there's a plan. It's that plan. When we did the one for phase 2, it got very concerning who was going to do the plan. At one point, we lost the plan. The contractor was to come. They didn't get the plan to him soon enough, so that grading didn't happen, so that got lost. Talks about the contractor caring for these for 2 years. I guess, I don't know, no irrigation. I guess they're going to go around with trucks. If this is part of the opportunity for the neighborhoods, then we need to know that and support irrigation too. Landscaping outside the right-of-way is an opportunity for neighborhoods. Well, the opportunity is more or less opportune depending upon the land gets left to us. Hoping that some language is in here that defines how the neighborhoods can make sure that they make it possible for this green space. I do have a question because probably for Mr. We were told that the neighborhood has to make the case that the green space is the highest and best use. I don't know, from this, can we say it's a done deal, or do we have to go some kind of process with RTA to make sure that the green space is more than possible? The other issue is mitigation and noise tests and all of that. If we got ahead of it, maybe TDOT could find some dirt to put to make swales when the contract landscaping. I don't know. Those are the kinds of things. Mountain Avenue still becomes a concern. It's a collaborative problem. I understand it's not the Grant Road specific problem. Accidents there all the time. It's the second largest bike path. And if TEP does what they say they're going to do and ruins Park Avenue, then all of the bikes are going to be moved over to Mountain for, I don't know how long it takes them to dig poles, but it'll be all that time. So if the green arrows save bikes, and I don't know if they do, we should.
So, Joan, we let you go a little bit over the 3 minutes.
Is that my minutes, guys?
And
I'm done.
Okay, and also please keep in mind that the task force or staff cannot respond to you directly during the call to the audience. So we can come back to this at a later time, but we cannot legally respond at this moment on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then Janet Fisher, I had you noted.
Thank you.
Okay, and if we can try to keep it close to 3-ish minutes, that would be great.
Okay, can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm pretty much going to read this so that I can get through it all in 3 minutes. I'm Janet Fisher, and I am representing the Grant Road Coalition and the Catalina Vista neighborhood. I've personally been following and attending meetings regarding the Grant Road Improvement Project for as long as I've been a resident of Catalina Vista. That's over 20 years. I've attended the recent public open house meeting and reviewed current project plans, proposed revisions, and comments. Regarding the adjacent neighborhoods and residential properties, this plan has a heavy emphasis on maintaining current conditions of residential neighborhoods, when in fact, current conditions have already become nearly intolerable due to the ever-increasing traffic, especially from heavy commercial trucks, contributing noise and air pollution. Grant Road will continue to be designated as the primary commercial artery cutting through the city, connecting I-10 both east and west. Adding an additional 2 more lanes of commercial traffic is a good reason to add and include a comprehensive residential mitigation plan into this project. It must be taken into consideration that phase 5 and 6 of the project primarily impacts residential properties, unlike previous phases consisting primarily of commercial areas. Of all 5 established neighborhoods impacted by the plan, 3 have historic designation, all have heavy pedestrian traffic, and all are permanent residents that will be impacted by this road expansion 24 hours a day. A different set of criteria should be included and applied to this residential portion of the project. An example of a completed RTA project that successfully integrated road expansion and adjacent neighborhoods, I will refer to the Campbell Avenue widening project completed in 2004. This project cuts through and borders several neighborhoods with historic designation. Identical to the Grant Road project, 4 lanes of traffic expanded to 6. However, unlike the Grant Road project, the Campbell project also included a residential mitigation plan. A mayor-appointed planning committee was formed and with residential representation. They adopted a comprehensive plan that included a linear park and visual art walls and successfully minimized the impact to the neighborhoods and elevated the visual and pedestrian enjoyment for the residents. Because of its demonstrated effectiveness, it makes good sense to integrate a similar plan on Grant Road. In addition to minimizing traffic impact, it will establish visual and design continuity and a strong component of the complete streets policy that should be integrated into this unique inner city pedestrian and retail mecca. In regards to the involvement of the Grant Road project over the years, the initial designs that were presented to property owners included a strong neighborhood mitigation component that included visual and safety walls. Why have the impacted neighborhoods been overlooked and excluded from the current plan? As it stands today, the Grant Road Improvement Plan is a short-sighted, traffic-only plan with no provision to preserve or enhance the existing areas. If we don't use this opportunity to enhance and create the vibrant, unique inner city area, we will potentially be creating an unlivable, undesirable inner city space. Is this what we want? In summary, the members of impacted neighborhoods are requesting a comprehensive neighborhood mitigation plan to be included in the unique residential phase 5 and 6. We are also requesting that a residential neighbor mitigation committee be formed consisting of city planners, project managers, and residents. Let's see, we ask that a plan be integrated into the Grant Road Improvement Project prior to proceeding with the approval of the 30% plan. On behalf of the neighbors and the Grant Road Coalition, we wish to thank the task force for requesting community input at the 30% stage of the project. We also appreciate the project managers for organizing the public meetings and responses and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. At that time, those were the only 2 requests that we received to the call to the audience. With that, Alejandro, we can move to agenda item F if you're ready. And Alejandro will be sharing his screen, so if you would like to shut off your cameras, that's fine. And if you have not muted yourself, if you could please mute.
Okay.
And Linda, we see that you have joined us.
Right.
Yay.
And we can hear you. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you. Can everybody see my screen?
No.
Yes.
Most of you.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, so I think, and Bob maybe can talk about this later, but I think that the purpose of this meeting is to just bring you an update on the feedback we heard in the public meetings that we had in April and May. I think, and Bob, again, feel free to address this later, but I think there'll be plans for other task force meetings to address phases 3 and 4 and things like the art and landscaping on that phase. So
that's correct, Alejandro. Grant Road 3-4, we're moving into a different phase. And starting in August, I think I've been instructed to give quarterly reports until construction actually starts. So activity will be picking up in Grant Road 3-4.
Excellent. So that information is coming, but we figured we had enough information for today and questions for you. So outline is what I already summarized. And then just so you're aware, at the end, we will ask you for your input and direction. If you recall, the way what we discussed last meeting was some proposed changes to the DCR. And at the end, we asked the task force for their opinion. And the opinion was that the task force wasn't ready to recommend anything without going to the public. So we did that, and I think it was a great exercise. We got affirmation of some things, good questions on others, good comments on things we hadn't thought of. So I think it was overall very positive. I will also, this is speaking for myself. I enjoyed being able to talk to people in person. It's not the same with the broken video. It's not the same via email. It was good to be able to have a back and forth discussion and conversation. So for me, it was good. Let's see, we did, as you may remember, because some of you I know attended these meetings, 2 in-person meetings, one on a Saturday morning and one on a Tuesday evening. So we could try to capture the residents as well as the business people. And we had 94 people signed in. It was, and thank you to Joan and everybody at the city for running this, because it was logistically a big effort to set up appointments for people, ensure we were socially distant. We lucked out with having good weather. One day we got the only rain of the year at the other meeting for a minute. But those in-person meetings went great. And then we had a virtual meeting with 35 attendees in early May. So I think we also learned that the recording a video ahead of time worked out pretty well. We had over 470 people watch that video. And it also provided, I think, a good baseline. So when people came to the actual meeting, we were all speaking the same language and we understood better what they wanted to know and what they knew and didn't know. So that was sort of a broad overview. I don't know if any of the task force members that were there at any of those had any views or perceptions of how it went, and if you want to share, if not, that's okay. But
well, I found that people were interested in the layout. You know, they came up to, I went to the one in the park, and it was a daytime one. This is Linda Marie talking. But people wanted to see the layout. They wanted to find their house, you know, or their property and look for, so they could better see what the changes would mean to them.
Yep.
And people seemed happy. They were walking around and got water and.
Thank you, Linda Marie. Yeah, that's good feedback. And thank you for attending.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the overall summary of how it went. We did provide comment forms, and we provided those both hard copies, but also, you know, electronic ones if anybody wanted one. We got 27 responses back, and this was obviously in the packet you received late last week. As I said, everybody appreciated the meeting format and the information. Most people thought that the exhibits and presentations were clear and helpful. One person didn't, and it's understandable. So that was the general feedback. Then we had the specific feedback on the 5 items that we brought to you. And I want to clarify, we wanted to ask the 5 questions that we asked you, so we could have more than a general feel of what people were thinking. We wanted to know that they have concerns with a specific one, or were they more in favor? So we asked the 5 questions, and we try to be succinct on what we were asking, but also try to explain the rationale and the trade-offs. So you can see here how it went. We had some people that had no opinion, but if you look at people supporting or opposing a particular change, there was fairly good support in 90% for this one to reduce acquisitions, 95% to eliminate turn lanes on Mountain. Landscaping was a little lower, but still 74%. And I know that has difficult trade-offs, which we'll cover in a minute. Converting the Country Club and Grant intersection to a regular intersection had good support. And adjusting the bike and ped locations was also a little low or lower than I expected, but I think it's still 80%. And the one or two people that had questions for me were more about, they thought there might be too many. So we tried to explain, why they were located where they were located near transit stops or key locations. So that was from the 27 comment forms that we received. Beyond that, we also received 72 comments and questions. And we got those not just from the forms, we got them from emails, phone calls, letters, all kinds of input. We did provide a response to each of those, and you received that also in your packet. I know it was lengthy, but they're all there. And then they've also been posted. Joan confirmed this for me. It's already on the Grant Road website, is it not? Oh, Joan is nodding. You're muted, but that can't be anything but a yes. So if anybody from the public wants to see the responses, they're available on the website. Just to give you an idea, the things that came up the most, both at the meetings and on those comment forms, had to do with 5 items. The dispensary and the concerns that it's creating for the neighborhoods. I think we explained to people that we know at this point that we will need to purchase a significant portion of that property for the project. With any property, the property owner can reserve the right to just sell part of it and not all of it. I think it might be unlikely, but the city cannot take eminent domain over something they don't need. So we will buy most of it. So that's what we know for the project. In the interim, we do know that the city's made a lot that the city already owns, a couple of properties down to the east available for parking. So that has not solved the parking problem, but it has improved things a little bit. There were also a lot of questions about the amount of traffic and speeds on Treat adjacent to the dispensary. We noted that the city is in the process of bidding out Bicycle Boulevard for Treat that will add speed humps, curb extensions and other things to slow traffic down, and a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. So that was more providing context than anything we can really do through the project. Regarding noise, we had a lot of conversations. The project will do a noise study, and we got questions as to why we haven't done it yet. The reason we haven't done it is because we're so early that we don't have, and this is true for a lot of the project. I mean, there's areas where we want to provide more definitive answers, but we can't yet at this stage until we nail down some items. And one of them is we need to know the alignment of the road, for instance, that it works. Then we need to work on the drainage so we know how high the road is going to be, because how far and how tall or how high the road is impacts the noise. So we let people know that we will do the noise report approximately at the 60% stage, and that we will use the same criteria that we've used on every other segment of Grant Road and the RTA. So this is what we used on phase 2 when we went through El Cortez, Jefferson Park, and other areas to evaluate noise. Got several questions about cut-through traffic. In some cases, conflicting input as to what people wanted, but the general thought is that with a project like Grant Road, a lot of the cut-through traffic is because the intersections on Grant are backed up, the major intersections. So people look for local streets as a shortcut. We've done before and after studies, both on Grant Phase 2 and on the Keno and 22nd overpass that was built about 7 or 8 years ago. And in both of those cases, we found that the construction of the project reduced the cut-through traffic. In fact, in Grant Phase 2 was litigation with one of the one of the shopping centers, and there were videos of before and after showing how it improved that situation. So we are looking at it, we're not ignoring it, but it stands to reason that if Grant flows better, there's less incentive to go into the neighborhoods. Got questions on the bike lane buffers. What we're showing right now is a painted buffer, similar to what we have on Grant Phase 2. Some people wanted the flexible posts, the plastic posts that are white and you can, knock over. And why they asked why we're not using it. The biggest reason is that we have a lot of driveways on this corridor, and it's very difficult to maintain good spacing for those, or maintain, just maintenance wise if they get hit so much. So, but we are, this is one of the things we don't have nailed down now, but we are looking at options on how to provide a stronger buffer. The city right now is doing a pilot program on other streets to try a few things. And depending on how those go, we'll see if one of those is a good choice for Grant Road. And the last one that came up a ton was a need for left turn arrows at Tucson Boulevard. This was not something that was contemplated originally, but as you can see in this photo, there's been a lot of growth around this intersection with culinary dropout, the gym, Orange Theory or Fitness, whatever it's called, restaurants, everything else. So there's been a lot more turning movements. The city reviewed this and found that left turn arrows are appropriate, and they are committed to, one, we're going to provide them with the Grant Road project, but I think Diana, the director of Transportation Mobility, committed that they were going to include this intersection on the next fiscal year to install those arrows. So hopefully within a year you will see left turn arrows at Tucson Boulevard. I'm going to take a quick breath here, just in case there's any questions on these items, or do we want to hold questions till the end? I'm open either way.
What's the pleasure of the task force? Does anyone have any questions for Alejandro on this public meeting summary?
Let me continue, and we'll have time for questions at the end. I think what I wanted to cover next is, as I said, we got some input on things that we either hadn't considered or things that, from a design perspective, we don't have a problem with implementing. They work okay with us and are a benefit to residents or businesses. So we are implementing those changes, and this is a summary of some of those. This does not include things we were already planning on doing, like people asked about noise studies. So that this is not a change, it's something we were already going to do, but these are things that are different. And I'll let Randy, as Bob mentioned, is the deputy project manager. I'll let Randy go through the ones on this page since you've worked on these the most, Randy.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Alejandro. So yeah, I'll go over a few of the changes that we've made since the public meeting to the plans due to the input we got. And as you can see on the screen there, the first one is no left turn arrows at Grand Mountain. As we've talked about before, Mountain's a bicycle boulevard and we want to keep it that way. We don't want to encourage any more traffic on Mountain as we can. And so a lot of the feedback that we did get at the public meeting was that they wanted to maintain that at Mountain. So from Mountain to Grant, we're proposing not to have left turn arrows at this stage. We did hear about providing space for neighborhood monument signs in locations, and that's definitely something that we can accommodate. And as we learn of those locations, their dimensions, we definitely can coordinate where those will go and provide space for them in the plan. So we're looking forward to looking at those locations and providing space within the project plans. Alejandro talked earlier a lot about the cut through traffic along neighborhoods. We heard a lot about it. Specifically for one of the neighborhoods along Loretta at Grant, We heard that there's a lot of cut through traffic from Doolin Middle School. As Country Club backs up, a lot of the cars like to take that neighborhood to kind of get around that intersection. And so one of the things that we were able to do there is we do have a curb extension on Loretta, or from South Bama Country Club on Loretta, trying to reduce the turning speeds and to not make that such an obvious cut through. And in general, for cut through traffic, any place that we can mitigate that's right next to Grant Road, we'll try to do what we can. The one thing that we will have a challenge with is going into the neighborhoods, far into the neighborhoods, and doing things that would be outside the scope of this project. But look like a good something we could provide there at Loretta.
Hey, Randy, and just to add to that, it doesn't mean that there are no solutions if there's internal neighborhood issues. The city has a neighborhood traffic mitigation program, and that's the appropriate venue for those. But we'll deal with anything that's at Grant or the major cross streets, like you said.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, we did hear about the need for a median opening at Sparkman, so we've been able to go through and revise that. For those of you that can see the screen, the top right corner of this slide here, you can see that we've revised this turn-in. Sparkman is a unique street. It provides access to a few houses, and that is the only access they have. They don't have any other alternative routes to get into the neighborhood. So they requested a left turn out. Before we had left turn in only, but we were able to listen to that feedback and provide the left turn out for that neighborhood since they don't have any other access to those homes. And finally, we heard about the need for bike crossings at Grant Road. And we went and reviewed our current design and saw that at Warren's actually a bicycle boulevard, and we're able to revise our pedestrian crossing that you can see on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, where it's going to be a combined bicycle and pedestrian crossing. So from the south, bikes would come up north, and then we've widened the sidewalk to 10 feet so bikes and pedestrians can share that, then head north, cross at the signal, and then again continue on to the sidewalk and to the north, and of course reverse for the other direction. So that was something that was lacking in the design at that current stage, and due to the feedback we were able to go in and revise that.
Thanks, Randy. Just a couple more items on this front. As I mentioned, I know one of the difficult trade-offs that we're talking about is the landscaping. And just to clarify, what we discussed and what we proposed at the public meetings is that overall the project will have the same amount of landscaping investment as other phases of Grant Road. But we want to focus that investment more on the residential areas because that's where, frankly, we have more room. In the business areas, the corridor alignment is very, very tight. So we also think that the residents appreciate that a lot. So we're trying to focus the landscaping budget more on that area. We are aware and conscious of the the need for shade and other things throughout the whole corridor, and equity issues and other things. So we are when we look at that business area of the corridor, we think we can use a decent amount of tree wells to provide shade. And this picture is the same spot at Grant and Oracle, and you can see how small these trees were in 2016 and the amount of shade they provide now. So they won't have the same density of plantings as we have in the residential area, but we will be able to place them at key locations. And I'm thinking bus stops, pedestrian crossings, and anywhere else that's relevant to provide some shade. I will say some businesses expressed concerns also with having a lot of landscaping in front of them for visibility. So understood is not ideal, but we're committed to finding solutions like this and enhanced streetscape to make those areas, inviting. We already talked about the left turn arrows at Grant and Tucson. And something else that came up, which I think the task force actually also brought up at our last meeting in March, was the need to keep the kids from crossing at Doolin at the wrong location. So for that, we were able to widen the median. I know it's a skinny median in that area, but we were able to widen it an extra couple of feet. And that would allow us to put a fence in the median to keep people from crossing. And we do have crossing locations at Country Club and Camilla. So it's not a lack of crossing locations. It's just, you know, kids are kids. So we want to provide that in that area. And if you're familiar with the crossing that the city built at Tucson High, where they have a fence in the median, it would be similar to that, just a narrower median. So those are some changes. I have one more thing where we want your input, but I will also say that we're not trying to pass the responsibility on to you. If you don't feel strongly about one of these, we have a preference, but we can accommodate either one of these options. This is, and I can see several of you looking at the screen. Thank you for paying attention. This is the area near Cherry and Grant. So the sign as we presented it is the top line here. And what that means is that people can turn left from Grant onto Cherry, both to the north and to the south. The comment we received was a concern that with this design, there might be too much traffic on Cherry because it's already an issue going to South Point High School here on the right side. You can see it. So people were, or at least one individual was concerned that it was too direct a route. And they asked if we could move the median opening from Cherry to Vine. We really can't do that because then we lose this pedestrian crossing. And if we put it at Cherry, it really doesn't make sense to have pedestrian crossing at Cherry and another one a block away. The intent with Vine is that there's bus stops and it's halfway between Warren and Mountain where people can cross. So that's a tough sell, but we could do something like this. Oh, and sorry, I know I'm speaking fast. The other concern is people, if we moved it to Vine, what we want to avoid is a direct route to the north here. That was the concern. If we move it to Vine, we would actually create a direct route to the south that goes all the way to Banner because Vine is continuous and Cherry's not. So it's opposite problems on the two sides. A design alternative is to move the eastbound turn mid-block here. So people who want to go to South Point High School can still do it, but it's a little less convenient. They have to make a U-turn and then a right at Vine, as opposed to a direct movement at Cherry. As I said, we can do either, but if anybody has any input, we're happy to hear it.
I have a question. This is Jim Hogan.
Jim?
I have a question on the original design coming north on Cherry to Grant. It looks like people can make a left out onto Grant Road. Is that correct?
No, that's a great question. And no, I know this is very small, Jim, hard to see, but this is curbing here in the median. So if you are coming up north and you want to make a left, you can't. You can make lefts from Grant, but not to Grant.
All right. So, but in that regard, then I see it's confusing to me. What we have there is we have another the side lane. I don't know what you call it there.
Oh, this is a frontage road for
the frontage road. So yeah, it seems to me that if you use that design, that you better have some signage there where people thinking they can make a left, think that median there at the signage road is the median for the east-west traffic.
Okay, understood.
The map is different than when you have signage out there, but I would be cautious about that.
Yep, no, that's a good point, and we will, again, we will detail that out. But what you point out is also important because I think today people can also come out of South Point High School going south and then make a left turn. With this project, if they come south, they won't be able to make a left turn, so it'll be less convenient. And I'm not saying it's going to fix all the problems, because it won't, but it's less direct access than it currently exists. And Alice, I see you have your hand up, so you're next. But you're on mute.
Unmute. Okay. I'm just looking at this and thinking that where you show that there's going to be that in the bottom design alternative where you're making a mid-block left turn where you're going to have young drivers going to be having to make another turning movement going across 3 lanes of traffic to get to Vine. I think that's a recipe for disaster with young kids. I mean, they're young drivers, and we have to do everything we can to help them make safe choices. But cutting across 3 lanes of traffic in a very short order is not easy. And, that's just a half block to be able to cut across the 3 lanes of traffic. And so I would think that actually the upper one might be a safer alternative, because then they actually just get onto Cherry. I'm sure the Cherry Avenue people are not very happy with that, because anytime you have a place and a way to get into a neighborhood, it tends to collect the traffic. And then, whoever lives there feels like their ox has been gored.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just wondering if this is going to be a safety issue with young drivers.
Right. They also have the option of making the U-turn and going all the way to Mountain to the signal to get more space and still get to the high school. But your point's well taken. They'll probably take the shortest route. A lot of them.
I know teenagers. This is what they do.
Anybody else? Oh, I see John Anderson. John, you have your hand up?
I do. Thank you. I support this change. As a representative of the alternative modes for transportation, I just like to point out that the best way to get hit by a car is one that's turning left. Left-turning vehicles tend to be looking more for oncoming traffic rather than for cyclists or pedestrians. So preventing them from basically making that left is a great way to ensure pedestrian or bicycle safety. So I think the redesign is a good one.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else has input on it?
If I may, again, this is Jim Hogan. I think on one of the previous slides, you talked about eliminating left turns. And I was unclear on that. Are you eliminating left turns off of Grant onto Mountain, or are you just eliminating left turn arrows at the light?
At left turn arrows at the light. So
okay, so you can still make someone coming east on Grant wanting to make a left turn onto Mountain. They can do that going north up towards South Point. So yes. In that regard, then I think the design, what Alice's concerns there in that design alternative are probably mitigated somewhat by the fact that people coming east on Grant going to South Point, they can make that left onto going northbound on Mountain.
Great point. Yeah. And Jim, you're exactly right. The situation on Grant and Mountain would be the same as it is today, which is you can make a left turn from Grant onto Mountain, but you don't get a dedicated arrow, because you provide that arrow, then it encourages more traffic to do that movement. So is there any other feedback on this? If not, I'll let you know. We are leaning towards the design alternative, because I think it's sensitive to the cut through traffic issue without a real negative impact. And Alice, I heard you, but I think I see the point that Jim made is a good one, is that they can actually eastbound, they can take Mountain if they don't want to make a U-turn and then a right. And it just removes the traffic from Cherry. So the point, what's interesting is it doesn't look like we have a full consensus. So I don't know if we need to do anything about that. I see Andrew, Alice, and John. So can we go in that order? Andrew?
Alejandro, could you kind of detail what maybe might be in the actual median space? in original design versus the design alternative? I mean, would there be more landscaping space, or is that going to be just all solid concrete, both designs?
Andrew, so if you look, for instance, in this area where the median is wide, there would be landscaping. So anywhere where it's wide, it's landscaping. When you get to like this here and this here, that would be concrete. And for instance, here in this design, this is also concrete, but this area would be landscaped as well.
Okay. Thank you.
What was next? Was it you, Alice?
Yes, and I will concede that you know, they can make their left turn a little bit further west, and that's probably just fine. So, you know, I'm glad that we have the discussion.
Thank you. John and then Shannon. John, did you have anything you wanted to bring up? Anderson, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I spoke earlier. I think you already called on me, Alejandro.
Okay. Sorry. Thanks. Then Shannon, you're up next.
I'm sort of leaning toward the design alternative. It seems to me to be a cleaner design. And if it helps keep some of the traffic off of Cherry, I have no problems with changing to the design alternative.
Very cool. Thank you. Jim, you have your hand up, and so does Roy. So Jim?
Yeah. Yes, I don't know whose phone is ringing. I don't know, it's not mine. But I had a question going back to a previous slide you had. So why don't we finish this discussion and then you can come back to me, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So Roy, how about you?
Yeah, the only question I have is on the design alternative. How many cars are going to be able to queue up in that left turn, that U-turn area?
Those are designed for about 150 feet, so that's about 7 cars or so. But so remember, I mean, that's for this U-turn. You also have the left turn at Mountain. And the other thing, and I know a lot of people don't believe me when I say this, is when you go from 4 to 6 lanes, you create more gaps. You know, there's more space in between vehicles because they're distributed across 3 lanes. And we also have a signal at Warren for the indirect lefts that create, you know, some breaks in traffic. So that should improve relative to existing conditions.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking about is that if you're going to have teenagers and they're all trying to get to school at the same time, how much of a, you know, are there going to be more than 7 trying to do the same maneuver, which is going to back up that lane against the, you know, the lane, the feeder lane.
Yeah, no, good point. We can look into it a little bit more. I think both are kind of similar. And again, the trade-off is, do we want to provide a bunch more storage at the expense of the landscaping in there? Intuitively, I think 7 vehicles is enough, but we can look more into it. So we will do that. Okay. Is there any other input on this item? It sounds to me, and Joan, I don't want to make a big deal of this, like this needs a whole vote, and you might tell me I'm wrong, but it seems like it's not a major design change and that we have consensus, unless somebody has a problem and wants to say something now to go with the design alternative.
So Moon and Linda, I know you guys aren't seeing the graphic and how well you can follow discussion. Do you have any comments at this time?
Yes, I wanted to know if these stops in the median are big enough to accommodate people with wheelchairs and walkers, and would they have enough time to make it across half the street and then the second half later,
question.
probably?
Yep, Linda, yeah, under both alternatives, the pedestrian crossing stays the same. And in both cases, it's, I think, 8 foot wide, the sidewalk in the median, and the ramps and everything else, so that there's enough room for the wheelchairs. And the timing is such that it accommodates people with disabilities.
Okay, and then they mentioned when I went to the event in the park, drive-on curbs, and I wanted to know what that is.
They mentioned drive-on curb.
Yeah, in other words, you would lose your sidewalk because people would be able to drive up on the curb and stop.
So I'll pull up a picture to share. Can you see if I share video?
No.
Or not video, I mean, photo? That's
I
also,
can't see anything, I can just hear you.
okay. So I'll do my best to explain. Drive-on curb is not a very good term. The term is, it's a wedge curb or roll curb. It's a curb, and I'll show to those that can see, I'll show you one here. It's a curb that you could drive over, and it's primarily so when you have a driveway, you can access your driveway without having to have specific curb cuts. Too far west.
So is the curb lower than normal?
It's same height, but instead of coming up vertically, it comes up over a couple of feet. So you can, if you are on the video, you can see it. It's sloped so that if you have a driveway, you can get in. And we are not using this type of curb on the main road on Grant. We plan to use it on the frontage roads for the residential areas so that people can access their driveway easily. That would be the only place where we plan to use it.
Yeah, I can visualize what you're talking about because people have added them and they must have got permission somehow because that kind of slant, extends into the roadway.
Yeah.
But I've seen them, I think on Edison.
Yep.
Somewhere not too far from me because I was out walking.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
it seems like the same type of curbs that you see all over Oro Valley.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, and Marana and a lot of the newer areas have that. It just provides more flexibility on the residential driveways. Good.
Okay, back to the meeting opening design near Cherry. There's a handful of task force members we have not heard from. Am I hearing that no commentary, that you don't have much feedback and that the design team can move forward as we discussed?
I want to know if you have met with the high school, Sal Point. Have you met with them to get their input and to make sure they feel their students are safe?
They were invited to the public meetings, and I know we've heard from a lot of the other schools and stakeholders. Doolin Middle School, we heard from boys and girls. I don't think we heard from Sal Point High School.
Then I would suggest that one of you go ask for an appointment and go and speak with I don't know whether it be the principal or maybe the student supervisor or someone. I just think that would be a good courtesy so you don't suddenly find out that they're really upset over something.
Okay, I think as a design team, Alejandro and Bob, we can follow up with Sal Point with a discussion, but back to the question on the table, Alice and Jim and Andrew, I see your hands raised, but I didn't hear anything from the few other task force members. So if anybody has a comment, otherwise we'll go to those that have their hands raised.
And I see John has his hand raised now. So for
yeah,
I
would endorse that request to include Sal Point High School in the discussion, at least as a courtesy. I think that's a rather important point to get their feedback. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Hey, and so I was going to ask a question of everybody. Is it fair to say that we need to reach out to Sal Point High School, but if they're not opposed, we can make the change, or we should make the change? Is that feasible direction? Because we don't want to bring you back every time we want to, every 2 weeks. I know you have limited time. So is it okay that okay, I see Jim gave me a thumbs up. And
I'll
Alice,
vote
Andrew.
yes. You can discuss it with them and go from there.
Sounds
Can
good.
we do a consensus vote?
Yeah, so that's Linda Marie, and I vote that you should be able to reach the final arrangement with South Point.
Okay, so the request is to do a roll call and the consensus decision. A quick reminder is that you could support the design team moving forward with the design alternative with an unqualified yes, perfectly acceptable. 3 is live with the decision, 4 is stand aside, 5 is I do not agree. So Letty will do a quick roll call and just give us a number as you see it up on your screen. And let's start with Moon and Linda since I just read them. So 1 through 5, how do you feel, Linda?
The design change, as long as the South Point is consulted before you do it. I think it's really important to include them in case they have some change that they want to ask of you.
Moon?
But I brought opposed to the change if that's agreeable.
Yeah, so, and Joan, I think what I hear from Linda Marie is that she finds the decision acceptable as long as we get concurrence from the high school. So I'd say that's around a 2.
That's what I was hearing also.
I agree.
Joe Yee?
He's muted. All right, you want to go on?
Okay, so Alice Rowe,
Unqualified, yes.
thank you. Andrew Jones,
Unqualified, yes.
thank you. David Sunderman,
You're muted. Do you want to show us a hand? David, you're on mute. You want to show us with your hand 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
David,
Unqualified, yes.
thank you. Deirdre Brosnahan,
An unqualified yes.
thank you. Jim Hogan,
Number 2,
thank
perfectly
you.
acceptable.
Thank you. John Anderson,
Number 1.
thank you. John Wakefield,
Number 2.
thank you. Moon Yee, you're muted. Okay, Roy Garcia,
2.
thank you. Shannon McBride Olson,
And unqualified, yes. At South Point, you should be able to talk to their CFO, who is Ernie Duarte. So I think you can get an educated answer from him. So
I was waiting
yes.
to see who was going to say that.
thank you. Susan Alexander,
1.
thank you. Okay, so that's everybody.
Okay, everybody's voted a 1 or 2. We have consensus to move forward. Alejandro, Jim, do we have to go back to another slide before we move on to the next item on the agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay, go.
Going back to the Sparkman opening, I think on the previous slide. Or that one there, yes. So there are 2 properties on the south of Grant Road that only have access off of Sparkman, is that correct?
Yeah, it might be more than 2. It's not a lot, but I think it's more than 2. And yes, the problem is there's no access. So let me, if you are, I'm pulling up the aerial photo. So, all these houses here, Jim, are off of Sparkman, and they can't go anywhere else because these apartments have I mean, there's a road here, but it's gated and it's a private road, so they can only go out, in and out at Sparkman.
Okay, so I don't have any problem with them going in and out. I'm just, when you do a left, left out, when you do a left out off of Sparkman, that's one of the few left outs. What's their problem with going, a left in is fine, but a left out, it seems to me, is going to create a lot more accidents. It's one of the few areas along Grant where people have a left out. I mean, if you're going to give them a left out, I don't see the need for it. That's all. I think it's going to create accidents. All the left outs all along Grant, east of Swan, for example, there at the shopping center, that's brutal.
Yeah, so in general, you're right, and we had that discussion with them. There's two mitigating circumstances. One is that there is no left turn lane in this direction, so they're not going to be in conflict with an eastbound left, Jim, which is an additional concern with those lefts out. And then the other one is that we're able to angle this so that we can provide enough room for a vehicle to be in the median without, sticking out. So they can do a two-stage movement. So that's why we.
All right. Well, only time will tell if it stays there. So that's, that's fine. I just, we're talking about reducing accidents. I mean, if they, since they can't make a left in, they can make a left in if they're going west. If they made a right and made a U-turn like everybody else has to do, I don't see the problem with that. But you know how that backs up when, you're going to get two cars there in the middle, quite a bit. And I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Nope. Philosophically, I agree with you. On this case, we just thought we can mitigate it, and there were a couple of neighbors that felt very strongly about it, so we wanted to accommodate it. And if people are not comfortable turning left, they can still make the right and U-turn. So your point's well taken, though.
All right, that's a good point.
Okay, a couple of things. Andrew, I see that your hand is raised, which you can address the group because you're on the task force. Vicki, France, as far as the structure of the meeting, we cannot call on you at this time. You do have some options of sending in your comments that we would be happy to send to the task force or address in future meetings. And that can be through the project website, the info line, and other options as you've been notified for the meeting. So Andrew, it's your turn to speak.
Just in regards to the Sparkman, the amount of people that live in that area, when you pull up the picture of that area, Alejandro, I mean, I'm literally sitting a few blocks away. So I experience this area a lot and have been a big fan of Tom's Antique Furniture right there, which he no longer has open. So that amount of traffic coming in and out of that intersection that would be possibly making a left-hand turn would be very minimal. So I can't imagine it would be a big backup or an issue. The only possible cause for larger amounts of traffic would be because of the commercial building that used to be the medical, Pima Medical School right there. When all the students would leave, they would try and exit on Sparkman. So depending on what the usage of that building, if it ever gets used again, that could really affect the amount of traffic comes off of Sparkman. But at a current, with the building vacant, it's hardly used ever.
Thank you. And we do have some big decisions for you guys to make still, actually the bigger decisions. So I don't want to shortchange you. Is everybody okay if we move to those big items, or do we want to talk? Okay. Okay, so here's the big questions for you guys. And you heard this in March when we met. We brought up to you 5 sort of significant changes to what's on the DCR. that we wanted your input, and this is why we went to the public, and this is the common response summaries that we shared, but we need your input on them. And we can do them one at a time and get a consensus vote on where we are, or we can, and I'm guessing that's the easier one, so we can have individual discussion on them, unless you guys want to take them all together. But let's go with one at a time, unless there's an objection to that.
Okay, so there's two ways that we can do this, task force members. You again are going to use the consensus ranking scale, and we can read your name and you can tell us your score as A, B, C, D, E, just through E, the miscellaneous we already took care of, or we can poll for each item. Does anyone have a preference?
Call for each item, I would have a preference.
Okay, so at this time.
And Joan, so let's do each item, and let's start in order. The first one, A, just as a refresher, what we did is we try to optimize the alignment to reduce some of the acquisitions. And if you think about it, we showed you the example of the Bay Horse Tavern that we're going to preserve, and a couple of other houses near Highland. The last thing I want to note is that the road would not get any closer to any of this to any residential property with this change. So the houses that are staying would not be any closer to Grant Road than they would have been before. There are a few businesses that will be closer, but not houses. And again, the trade-off is trying to make this a reasonable project. So with that, Joan, do we want to have discussion, or are we ready to vote?
Jim has his.
I have one quick question, if I may, Jim Hogan again. These are the 5 or 6 items that you went over earlier, right? And indicated very high percentage of the neighborhood were in favor of these. Is that correct? Of each of these? Okay,
Yep. Thanks. So this is these items, Jim.
Right.
There's
All right,
1, 2,
thank
3, 4, 5. Yep. Exactly. So we're on item 1.
With that in mind, I would suggest we do it we do them as a group.
You're saying do all 5 of them at once?
Yes.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Well, let's give it a try.
I agree.
Okay, Linda, since you had a different opinion, can you go with the current input that we're receiving from your other task force members on making a decision on the elements as they were asked to the public and we received the feedback?
Well,
And
I can't see it.
So let
I'm
me
kind of abstaining from voting.
Okay. Alejandro, why don't you go to this slide so we can read it to Moon and Linda, and maybe they can be comfortable enough. No, the A through F.
Oh, yes. So the 5 big items, one was to reduce the acquisition of residential and business property. That's A. B was to eliminate the turn lanes on Mountain to preserve vegetation, lighting, and bikeway and the other elements, basically to reduce the cut-through incentive on Mountain and preserve it as a bike corridor. C was to increase landscaping in the residential areas and reduce plantings around businesses to limit acquisitions and improve visibility. And as part of that, we are doing the tree wells as well. D was to eliminate the indirect left turns at Country Club and Grant because of reduced impacts to some of the businesses there and the schools. And E was to adjust the bike ped crossings to make sure they line up with the City Bikes Boulevard master plan and make sure they're at least no more than a quarter mile apart. Those are A through E.
Yeah,
That's
they
what you
all
want?
sound good.
Okay, so Linda, on the consensus decision making, would you give it a 1 for an unqualified yes, a 2 from perfectly acceptable, 3 live with this? Excuse me? 2. Okay. So Linda, what we're hearing is a ranking of 2 on all of the adjustments to the DCR as presented in the last meeting and in the public meetings.
Correct.
Thank you. Moon, are you with us? And if you're on your phone, if you hit *6, you can take yourself off mute and let us know your opinion.
I vote 1. This is John Wakefield. I vote 1.
It's number, I vote 1, number 1.
Okay, thank you. I hear John Wakefield say yes for 1.
Yeah.
Okay, Letty, we'll go through roll call.
Alice Rowe,
1.
thank you. Andrew Jones,
1.
thank you. David Sunderman,
1.
thank you. Deirdre Brosnahan,
I'm 1 on all items except for C. I would consider myself a 3. I can live with the decision, but I do feel like for the residential neighborhoods that abut the business district, that vegetation and that heat island mitigation would still be valuable.
Thank you. That's the feedback we're looking for.
thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Hogan,
I would say a 2, please.
thank you. John Anderson,
Number 1, but I'd like to echo Deidre's sentiment on whichever letter that was regarding landscape.
C. Yeah.
okay.
Putting us to the test tonight here.
Roy Garcia,
2.
thank you. Shannon McBride Olson,
Again, I'm a 1, but I agree with Deidre on item number 3.
okay.
So I don't know what that works out as, but yeah.
We have it. We have it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Susan Alexander,
I'm a 2. I'd be a 1 except for the trees or the landscaping again. Because the neighborhood input was overwhelmingly, or the majority in favor of the decision, then I think we go with the neighborhood.
okay.
Just
Yeah.
for what it's worth, I mean, we've heard you and we're aware of how sensitive the landscaping is and how important it is. So we will do our best to accommodate as much of it as we can. And if we find opportunities with remnant parcels or other things that become available, we will try to use that as well. So.
Okay, so we have on agenda item G, we have consensus for everything from A through G. The G was the miscellaneous, which was the median at Cherry. So that will be all reflected in the legal action report in the minutes. The call to the audience, the next item we had moved up in the agenda based on discussions. So at this time, I think Alejandro, you can stop screen sharing. And Bob can take a minute if he wants to clarify anything as far as next steps go.
Well, next steps, I guess we're looking at the 60%. We're looking to move forward with the design and hopefully get back to at the 60% level. Is that true, Alejandro, to do another meeting here?
Yes, Bob, but I think first, I mean, our next step is to do the 30% plan, actually. I mean, I know we've been calling this 30%, but that was a working plot until we got consensus. So now we will produce the actual 30%, I'd say late summer, so probably August. After that, we would submit to the city for technical review. And once we get review comments from the city, we'll try to detail, or we won't try, we will detail stuff out for the 60%. And come back to the public or you guys at that point. I will say that the 60% is probably still a ways away because the most work on a project goes from between the 30 and the 60%. So, and I'm not saying years away, but I'm saying it could be, a year away.
And with that 60% plan, we'll have a landscape layout at that point, true?
Yes, yeah, there'll be detailed landscape plans at 60.
Okay. The in between, of course, I mentioned we'll be doing the Grant Road 3-4 updates. And I believe we're coming to consensus with the Art Council. And I'm hoping I can share that in August. And so I think that's what's on the agenda. Are we missing something, Alejandro?
No, I think you covered it, Bob.
Will August meeting be virtual or not?
I'm assuming it'll still be virtual in August because we're going to do, I think we're going to be able to do quarterly. And to be really honest, there are a lot of things happening on Grant Road 3-4 that you're just not able to see it. We're going a lot of underground utility relocations. That'll be starting, well, it's already started, and that'll be going through the summer. So around the end of August, there'll be a lot of activity in that regard, not construction, but utility relocations.
Bob, can I expound on that?
Okay, then in August, could we do this by Zoom?
Yes, maybe not.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can, Bob.
Oh, okay. I was wondering who had Zoom. I know our other consultant uses WebEx, but I guess, Joan, will you have Zoom available?
Yes, and we know the challenges, Linda, that this presented you and others. And also the city of Tucson is making a decision for all commissions on how they can handle their meetings. So by the time we get to August, we will have some other options available to us, be it virtual, be hybrid, or others, but we are not in a position to discuss it. But Linda, we can go ahead and have a Zoom meeting as long as I don't hear any complaints from any of the other task force members or feedback from the community, because we do host them both ways.
Okay, great. I appreciate that.
Hey, and Linda, we will post the presentation from tonight, right, Joan? That way you'll at least be able to refer back to the slides at a later point.
Yes, everything will get posted tomorrow. Okay, with that, it's time for our roundtable, and it's the opportunity for the task force to make any comments to those in attendance at tonight's meeting. And you can just raise your hand, you can say pass, I can call you as I see on your screen. It's one of those tough things. Okay, Alice.
Okay. I am really pleased that we had those in-person and other virtual meetings to come to get to the public, because this is what my concern was, that they didn't have any idea what was going on. So thank you all for having made that work. And I know everybody was excited about seeing each other after a year of being under lockdown. The other thing I was going to say is that my understanding is that once we get our 30%, then maybe we can make an offer to the Harvest Dispensary building and get that. I'm on a warpath on that one. I'd really like to have that business moved elsewhere. And it's not just a NIMBY-ish thing, but I just think they need more parking where they got to be, because people are lazy. They don't want to walk across the street. They don't want to walk across a dirt lot, even if they're stoned. Anyway, but thank you very much for putting this meeting together. I appreciate it.
Thank you. John, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, thank you. Joan, I was just hoping that when Alejandro's 30% plans are ready, if you might be able to send out a link to those plans so I could forward them on to the neighborhood associations and such in a rather convenient way.
Yes, that is our intent, but Alejandro told me not to overpromise anything tonight, that he needs some time to do his engineering. But as soon as they do become available, we will send the task force a note and make them available on the project website. Yep. Jim Hogan?
Yes, first of all, I want to apologize for being late. Secondly, I'll stay on for a little bit if the representative from the city can take my oath. But my loyalty oath. I've got it signed and notarized, but my apologies for not getting it in sooner. Notaries are hard to find these days.
Yes.
Other than that, I want to concur with what Alice just mentioned.
Jim, the clerk's office is going to follow up with you separately tomorrow. She did not stay on for the full length of the meeting, but they will handle the paperwork accordingly. And you were in accordance for tonight's meeting.
All right, thank you.
Deirdre?
I would agree with what Alice said. It was really helpful to have that public meeting, both in person and virtually, and to get that summarized feedback of what the public's concerns were. And I would just again echo with, when we're in the business district, we're still adjacent to neighborhoods. And so trying to find those remnant parcels, those pocket park, those green space opportunities, they're critical, because if you look at the city's heat maps, those neighborhoods that are adjacent to that business district are already red zoned for some of the hottest neighborhoods. So I think as much as we can see the worth of putting it in that landscape and look for those remnant parcels to do so, even if it means a small amount of additional acquisitions. And I would also support having that meeting for phase 3-4 to take a look at both the landscaping and the art, because I think we had expressed in our last meeting that that needed further discussion. So devoting some time in the agenda for those items to be presented.
Yes, thank you. That's so true. And Bob heard you that we will be sure that it's on the next agenda. John Wakefield?
Yeah, thanks to everybody putting this meeting together. We appreciate it very much. I have no real comments, just a little nostalgic remark. My business, Artistry and Glass, was located right next to Sparkman for 20 years. So it's kind of a kick to look at the map now and see a completely vacant plot. So the program moving forward, I'm very grateful to the city of Tucson for their assistance in moving. It turned out to be a great move for us. And so I want to thank them right now, and then look forward to being in touch next month. Thanks very much, everybody.
Shannon?
I just wanted to echo what Deidre said, especially about the heat islands. You know, on a day like today, you realize how critical it is. And as I drive around Tucson, I'm always appreciative of being on any street where there's any form of landscaping that helps, you know, in the center medians and then everything that kind of helps visually make it more pleasant, but also, you know that it helps, it's helping our environment just a little bit. Thank you.
Great. So there's a couple task force members that we have not heard from. Does anyone wish to speak up, or do we take that as no comment?
The only thing I wanted to mention is I wanted to commend neighborhoods that work together to get that little remnant park off of Park Avenue put together. That was that's a nice addition to that area, you know, where the detention is, and then on the opposite side of the park.
Okay, Moon, you can talk now. Roy just finished.
Hello, this is Joe Yi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I just want to say that this is a great meeting, and I want to say kudos to the staff, the consultant, the neighbors, as well as the committee member. Thank you.
Roy, were you finished with your comment? I might have cut you off.
No, I'm done.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. So Susan or David, do you have any comments?
I just, again, echoing what has been said, that I appreciate that the team held the neighborhood meetings and took the input and then presented it to us in such a clear fashion. So it was easier to make a consensus decision today. Thank you.
And David?
I just wanted to comment that I'm glad that everything was presented and that the neighborhood meetings came out very well. And the advice given at the neighborhood meetings has been taken into account.
Okay, great. I think with that, unless any of the team members or task force have closing comments, I would like to thank you all. We had full attendance of our task force. We know that trying to have meetings at this time of year, but you guys were all there for us. It's going to give the city and the design team things to work on, and we'll be back in touch the same way to poll for an August meeting and how we'll schedule it with whatever options are available come August. So thank you, and everybody have a nice, safe evening.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
It is